They say this thing is a chemical bomb, a slow one. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that waits. Most people believe it's made of plastic. Some swear it melts when you pour boiling water on it. Others are convinced it sticks to your stomach, coats your insides, and never fully digests. This curly brick everyone warns you about. Instant noodles. Cheap. Suspicious. Uncomfortably addictive. The food people eat when they're tired, broke, or out of options. The food they crave at night and feel guilty about the next morning. But stop for a second. Look at it closely. What do you really see? A shortcut to sickness? A symbol of bad decisions? Or just edible trash? Because what if all of that is wrong? What if this isn't poison? What if this isn't a mistake? What if this is actually one of the most brilliant engineering solutions ever created for food? Because this brick didn't come from greed. It didn't come from laziness. And it definitely didn't come from a secret lab trying to harm you. It came from hunger. Real hunger. The kind that empties cities. The kind that forces people to stand in freezing lines just to get one bowl of hot soup. The kind that turns food into the difference between getting through the day or not. To understand why instant noodles exist, you have to go back to a time when food wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was survival. After World War II, large parts of Japan were destroyed. Cities were in ruins. Supply chains were broken. Millions of people were struggling to eat. Every day, long lines formed for a simple bowl of noodle soup. Not because people loved noodles. Because that bowl meant warmth. Calories. Another day alive. One man watched those lines every day. A bankrupt businessman with no factory, no funding, and no influence. Just an obsession. He believed that peace would only come when people had enough to eat. His name was Momofuku Ando, and he believed something radical for his time. Not speeches. Not ideology. Food. So he asked a question most people weren't asking. Not, how do we cook better food? But, how do we feed millions of people fast? Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. He locked himself in a small shed behind his house. For almost a year, sleeping just a few hours a night. And he failed. Again and again. Noodles stuck together, fell apart, turned into paste. Spoiled too fast. Took too long to cook. The goal seemed impossible. Create food that could be stored for months. Prepared in minutes. And sold for almost nothing. Then one ordinary moment changed everything. He was watching food being fried in hot oil, and he noticed something simple, almost invisible. When food hits hot oil, the water inside it escapes instantly, violently, not slowly. The water disappears, but the structure stays. That was the breakthrough. If noodles were cooked first, then briefly fried, the water inside would evaporate, leaving behind millions of microscopic holes. Tiny pores, invisible to the eye. Later, when boiling water was added, those pores would fill again. The noodles would rehydrate, heat would move fast, texture would return. 3 minutes. No magic, no mystery, just physics. This is the core idea behind instant noodles. And this is why so many myths exist. Because something that cheap, that fast, and that convenient feels wrong to us. Our brains are trained to believe that good food must be slow, expensive, and complicated. Anything else feels suspicious. So people invent explanations. Plastic, wax, glue, chemicals. But science says otherwise. There is no plastic. There is no wax coating your stomach. The shine and elasticity people talk about come from alkaline water used in the dough. A simple mineral solution that changes how the noodles behave, making them firm and springy instead of falling apart. Without it, you wouldn't have noodles. You'd have wet bread. The myth sounds scary. The truth sounds boring. And boring truths rarely go viral. But here's where the real conversation begins. Because the danger was never hidden chemicals. The real danger is habit. Instant noodles are extremely efficient food. Dense in calories, high in salt, often fried in oil. One packet once in a while? Not a problem. Eating it every day? That's where your body starts keeping score. This food was never designed to be a complete diet. It was designed to be reliable, fast, predictable, emergency food, backup food, survival food, and yet over time it became comfort food. That's why instant noodles spread everywhere, across countries, across cultures, across income levels. Not because people are stupid, But because modern life is fast, workdays get longer, cities grow, time disappears. And when time disappears, cooking changes. This brick didn't replace traditional food. It joined it, adapted to it. Spicy here, mild there. Seafood, beef, chicken, curry. Same base, endless variations. That's why instant noodles survived every trend. They bend without breaking. So before you call this food poison, stop and ask a better question. Why do so many people need food like this in the first place? Because the story of instant noodles isn't really about noodles. It's about time, pressure, and how humans engineer solutions when the world moves faster than we'd like. And this is only the beginning of that story. To really understand this invention, you have to forget the packet, forget the brand, forget the taste, and look at the man behind the idea. His name was Momofuku Ando, and before the world knew his name, he was nobody special. No lab, no investors, no degree in food science. Just a man living in a country that had been pushed to the edge. Post-war Japan wasn't just poor. It was unstable. Food shortages were common. People weren't asking what tasted good. They were asking what lasted. And Ando noticed something most people ignored. The problem wasn't that food didn't exist. It was that food didn't survive time. Fresh food spoiled. Cooked food went bad. Transport was slow. Storage was unreliable. Food kept dying before it reached the people who needed it. So Ando became obsessed with a strange idea. What if food didn't have to die? What if you could pause it, not freeze it, not preserve it with chemicals, but suspend it, like pressing pause on a movie? That question sounds simple, but it's brutal when you try to answer it. Because food is alive in a way we don't think about. It changes. It reacts. It decays. Stopping that process without destroying the food was the challenge. And Ando failed constantly. He boiled noodles. They turned to mush. He dried them slowly. They cracked and broke. He stored them. They molded. Every version either tasted wrong, took too long to prepare, or spoiled too fast. The rules seemed impossible. Long shelf life. Short cooking time. Low cost. Pick two. But Ando refused to accept that. He wasn't trying to create something perfect. He was trying to create something dependable. And that mindset mattered. Because one night, while watching food cook in oil, he noticed something most people would ignore. Water doesn't leave food gently. It escapes violently. When hot oil hits cooked noodles, the water inside flashes out almost instantly, not slowly drying, exploding out. And when the water leaves fast enough, something strange happens. The structure doesn't collapse. It stays, but now it's full of empty space. Tiny tunnels. Microscopic pores. That was the moment everything clicked. If food could be dried fast enough, it wouldn't rot. If it kept its structure, it could be revived. So Ando changed his approach. Cook first. Fry briefly. Dry instantly. Not to make it tasty, but to trap the shape. The result looked dead. Dry. Brittle. But it wasn't dead. It was waiting. And when hot water returned, the pores filled. Heat moved fast. The noodles softened. Time collapsed. Minutes replaced hours. That's when instant noodles stopped being an experiment and became a system. A system that could be repeated, scaled, copied. And systems don't care about culture or language. They care about reliability. And that's why this idea spread so fast. Not because it was delicious, not because it was healthy, but because it worked. Every time. But success created a new problem. Once something works too well, people stop asking why it exists and start judging it for what it isn't. Instant noodles were never meant to be traditional food. They were never meant to replace cooking. They were meant to remove friction. Time friction, access friction, cost friction. And when you judge them by the wrong standards, you miss the point entirely. People say, if it's that fast, it must be fake. If it's that cheap, it must be harmful. If it lasts that long, it must be toxic. That logic feels natural. But it's wrong. Because longevity doesn't come from chemicals here. It comes from dryness. Remove water, and bacteria stop. Decay slows down. Time stretches. That's not a trick. That's physics. The invention didn't fight nature. It used it. And that's why it survived. But survival has a cost. Once instant noodles proved they could exist anywhere, anytime, They stopped being emergency food. They became everyday food, comfort food. And that's where misunderstanding turned into fear. Because when people use a tool outside its purpose, the tool gets blamed. A hammer isn't dangerous. Using it wrong is. Instant noodles aren't poison. They're precise. They do exactly what they were designed to do. Feed you fast. And now that you understand the mind behind the invention, the next step is unavoidable. We have to open the brick itself. Not emotionally. Not morally. Physically. Because once you see what's actually inside, the myth stops sounding scary and starts sounding lazy. Now it's time to stop guessing. Stop repeating myths and actually open the brick. Because fear loves the unknown. Most people imagine instant noodles as something artificial, synthetic, engineered in a lab. But when you break them down, layer by layer, the truth is much simpler and much less dramatic. It starts with wheat, not plastic, not powder from a factory, just refined wheat flour, the same base used for bread, pasta, and countless foods around the world. But this flour has one important quality. It's rich in gluten. Gluten is what gives dough strength, elasticity, memory. It allows noodles to stretch without breaking and survive boiling water without collapsing. Without gluten, instant noodles wouldn't exist. They would dissolve. That's the foundation. Next comes water. But not ordinary water, alkaline water. This is where the yellow color comes from. Not eggs, not dye. A simple mineral solution changes the chemistry of the dough. It tightens the structure, makes the noodles firm and springy instead of soft and fragile. People hear the word chemical and panic. But chemistry isn't poison. Cooking itself is chemistry. Bread, cheese, yogurt, wine. All chemistry. This one just sounds scarier because it has a name. Now comes the part people don't like. Oil. A lot of oil. During production, the noodles are first steamed. At this point, they are already cooked. Edible, finished, but useless. They would spoil quickly and take too long to prepare. So they are fried. Not for taste. Not for color. For structure. Hot oil forces the remaining water out instantly. Not slowly drying. Violently escaping. As the water leaves, it creates millions of microscopic pores. Tiny holes you can't see, but that change everything. This is the sponge effect. When you pour boiling water at home, those pores fill up. Heat spreads fast. The noodles soften evenly. That's why 3 minutes is enough. No trick. No deception. Just dehydration and physics. Now let's talk about the packet. The powder everyone fears. Salt. A lot of it. Sugar. For balance. Dried garlic, onion, chili, ginger. Real spices, just concentrated. And then flavor enhancers. Big words, numbers, codes. People treat them like danger signs. But these compounds exist naturally in tomatoes, mushrooms, cheese, and meat. They don't create flavor from nothing. They amplify what's already there. The packet isn't dangerous because it's artificial. It's dangerous because it's dense, highly concentrated flavor and salt designed for survival food. And this is where the real problem lives. Not in chemistry. In habit. Instant noodles are not balanced meals. They are optimized meals. Optimized for speed, shelf life, reliability. One packet once in a while? Fine. Using it as a daily replacement for real food? That's where consequences appear. Too much salt stresses the body. Too much oil adds up over time. The damage doesn't come from one meal. It comes from repetition. That's why people get confused. They want a villain, a single ingredient to blame. But health doesn't work that way. It's patterns, frequency, routine. Instant noodles aren't evil. They're incomplete. They do exactly what they were designed to do. Feed you fast. And when used for that purpose, they work perfectly. But when they replace variety, balance disappears. This is why instant noodles create such strong opinions. They sit at the intersection of modern life. Speed, pressure, lack of time. In a world where cooking takes effort and time feels scarce, this brick becomes tempting. Not because it's amazing, because it's predictable, always the same, always ready, always there. And predictability feels safe when life isn't. So before you call instant noodles poison, ask a better question. Is the problem the food or the system that makes people rely on it? Because once you see what's actually inside this brick, the fear fades. And what remains is something far more interesting. A tool, an engineered solution, one that works incredibly well. As long as you use it for what it was meant to be. And that leads us to the final step, what this food became once it spread across the world. At this point, most people expect a verdict, a warning, a final sentence that says, don't eat this. But that would be too simple. And wrong, because instant noodles didn't survive for decades by accident. They didn't spread across continents because people were ignorant. They spread because they solved a problem that keeps coming back, in every country, in every era. Time. Modern life runs fast. Cities grow. Workdays stretch. Cooking shrinks. And when time disappears, food adapts. That's why instant noodles show up everywhere. Not just in poor places. Not just during crises. In some of the richest, most technologically advanced countries on Earth, instant noodles are part of everyday life. In South Korea, they're eaten at home, at work, and in restaurants. There are entire stores dedicated to them. Machines designed to cook them perfectly. Even robots that prepare them. This isn't desperation. This is integration. In China, tens of billions of servings are eaten every year. Not because people don't know how to cook, but because convenience has value. Predictability has value. A hot meal in 3 minutes has value. Instant noodles didn't replace traditional food. They joined it. They adapted to local tastes. Spicy here, mild there. Seafood, beef, chicken, curry. Same base. Endless variations. That's why this brick works globally. It bends without breaking. But let's be honest, this is not health food. And it was never meant to be. Instant noodles are functional food. Engineered for speed, shelf life, consistency. They are excellent at what they were designed to do. And terrible at what they were never designed for. The real mistake isn't eating instant noodles. The real mistake is treating them like a complete diet. High salt, high oil, low fiber, low protein. Not poison, just incomplete. So here's the real rule. The honest one. Eat them sometimes. Not every day. Use less seasoning. Or skip it. Drain the broth. That's where most of the salt and fat stay. Add something real. An egg. Vegetables. Meat. Turn a survival product into an actual meal. That single change flips everything. And now zoom out one last time. The same idea that once fed people standing in long lines later fed students, workers, travelers, soldiers, disaster zones, and eventually even astronauts. The same physics, the same structure, just different environments. Food that waits. Food that travels. Food that wakes up when needed. That was the dream behind this invention. Not comfort, not luxury. Resilience. So the next time you open that noisy packet, stop for a second. You're not holding trash. You're not holding poison. You're holding a solution designed for a world that moves too fast and breaks too often. And now I want to ask you something. How do you eat your instant noodles? Plain? Upgraded? In a way nobody would admit out loud? Write it in the comments. Because behind every simple meal, there's a story far bigger than it looks.